Again, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining us at the Sully District Council meeting of June 2023. I'm not on the picture, but I don't have to be this. Okay, so, yes, all right. So thank you all for coming today to our council meeting. This circular signing, please, if you would sign in. Our guest tonight, our featured guest, is Sully Supervisor Kathy Smith to review the state of Sully. And we're happy to have you.
Thank you,
And we
Jay.
have a microphone there and a camera. You can hear the people speaking. We're projecting the screen, so we'll be able to see you on the screen if you haven't hid yourself. Be on your best behavior. Thank you so much. Have a great day. Thank you for joining us. And I'm going to turn you over to Kathy. Thank you again.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate the chance to come out and talk to people. So I am going to go over some things in Sully, things about the budget and other things that are happening, and then we can open up to questions. So first, I'm going to start with the budget. This year, we were able to fully fund the school budget, which gave a full pay raise to the teachers. And then we also fully funded the compensation package for our county employees. You know, we're in the same situation that businesses all across the country are facing, being able to hire people and keep people. And so this year's budget had the full rate market adjustment that gets calculated every year, and that was 5.44% for all county employees. And then we also funded longevity and performance increases. And so general non-uniformed county employees will receive between 5.44% and 9.44%, with those at the lowest end of the pay scale receiving the most. And so we have public hearings about the budget. And one of the things that we were really hearing about the budget is we needed to do a better job paying our police officers. And so in this budget, we did a number of things, and we did some things last year. So for police pay this year, Fairfax County police officers will receive an average increase of 12.88%. The range that they're going to get is between 10.44% to 15.44%, and a small number of officers would get over 20%. And so adding in last year's increase, average increase of 9.3%, the board has increased police pay by 22.1% over 2 years. And then one of the other things that they did is there was a lot of discussion about starting police pay. The reality is most people that came in weren't on the first step of the pay scale. So they removed that step. So the beginning salary went from $56,000 to $65,000. So that was a good increase. And then the fire department, sheriff's departments, and public safety communications staff will see an average increase of 7.83% with a range of 5.44% to 10.44%. And let's see, the approved budget did reduce the real estate tax rate by 1.5 cents. And it also included a 10% ratio reduction in personal property tax. What we found during the pandemic and with all the issues with supply chain was usually we're used to our cars when they get older, the value going down, but the value of used cars was going up. And so the previous year's budget, there was a ratio, and our tax administrator has to figure out what the ratio should be. He has to study that. So last year was an 80% of the value of your car. This year it's 90%, and that should keep the tax rate on most cars the same. Part of the issue with the car tax is a number of years ago, Virginia decided there was a get rid of the car tax. And so the General Assembly was putting money aside for localities so they wouldn't lose that revenue. Part of the issue is in 2007, they set that number at $995 million, and they haven't changed it since then. So as the value of cars has gone up, the portion that gets paid by that state piece has gone down. So the individual car owners are having to pay more of that. So our board has advocated to the General Assembly that they should increase that funding. Okay, let me see. So the other thing that the board has done over the last few years, we've expanded real estate tax relief for seniors and people with disabilities. We included the gross household income and asset limits, and that took place in tax year 2022. And the board approved enhancements for tax year 2023, including a new 75% income eligibility bracket and new tax deferral option. We haven't had a tax deferral program, and so this is the first year we've had that, as well as capping total taxes relieved at 125% of the mean assessed value of Fairfax County homes. And so that's kind of a quick overview of the main parts of the budget. Another big priority of the board is affordable housing. You've all seen the way the prices of homes have gone up, and we believe that people that work here should be able to live here. The board has been doing a lot of.
You get audio. Excuse us. Please mute yourself unless you're asking a question. We're not yet entertaining questions. We will mute you if necessary. And if you identify, please identify yourself with your name tag. Right now, I see an HP. I'm certain that it's your computer and not your initials. We'd like to know who you are, not what machine you're using.
Should I keep going?
Please go.
Okay. All right. So the board has really been working hard with our staff to have more affordable housing. One of the things that we're doing for that is taking county-owned property and looking where we can turn that over to our Housing and Redevelopment Committee. And then they are partnering with affordable housing developers to create that. So there's going to be affordable senior housing down Stringfellow Road. It's really in Springfield District off of Autumn Willow. That is going to be, I think, about 153 units, about at 60% of area median income. We're looking at doing that at the government center in the parking lot in the front. There'll be affordable housing there. And there's a spot up in Chantilly across on Route 50 near the police fire station there. So those things are in the process to get more affordable housing. And we changed our goal. We had a goal of 5,000 net new affordable housing units.
That's
Yeah,
fine.
please mute yourself before we review.
The strange new world we're in, right? Okay, I'm going to try that again. The board has a goal of achieving 10,000 net new affordable housing units at 60% area median income or below by 2034. As part of the FY23 third quarter adjustment, the board added an additional $8 million towards affordable housing. When combined with baseline funding of just under $30 million in the FY23 budget, this results in total county allocation for affordable housing in fiscal year 23 of just under $48 million. When also including $45 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds over the last 2 years and over $25 million in county funding in fiscal year 2022, the 2-year total commitment for affordable housing totals over $118 million. And so we really are focused about creating places where people can live. And the county webpage has an affordable housing dashboard, and currently there are over 2,911 units that are built or in the pipeline to reach that 10,000 unit goal by 2034. Okay, I'm going to switch to transportation. Route 28, the county has a project from the Prince William County line up to Route 29. We're widening Route 28 from 4 lanes to 6 lanes. When we started this project, we were looking at a solution that was going to be 6, 7, or 8 lanes, depending on the capacity. At that same time, around 2017, the General Assembly was looking to provide more funding to Metro. And what they did was they reduced funding to Fairfax County, to the region. And so we lost funding, so we could no longer do the 6, 7, 8 solution for Route 28. And so what we decided to do is it's going to be 6 lanes, but staff had the road designed at the full width that it would be when we have to get to 8 lanes someday. And the stormwater that's being put in will also be able to take that capacity. So 6 lanes for now, but we are in a good position in the future if we have to go to the 8 lanes to do that. Route 28 is going to be widened from 4 to 6 lanes. You know, there's parts of, I'm sorry, Route 29, if I said 28. Route 29, there's parts of it that are 3 lanes each way. And so they're working on another piece of that from Union Mill to Buckley Gates Road. A lot of that is in Springfield, but we have our share of it. And there's going to be a 10-foot wide shared use path on both sides. We had a groundbreaking on March 8th of this year, and it's estimated to be completed by 2026. There'll be improvements to some of the roads like Stringfellow and Clifton on one side. That intersection will be improved. And so they're working on that project. VDOT did what's called a Route 50 STARS study. We all know how Route 50 can back up. And I was really pleased. We had great community input in that study, especially people that lived right near Galesbury Lane and those areas, because they understand the impact of the traffic there. And so VDOT conducted a 2-part study of Route 50 from Route 28 to Stringfellow Road. The study reviewed the corridor and provided recommendations. The first phase final report was issued in March of 2021. The second phase final report should be issued this summer. And so they had lots of recommendations, and the community was involved in this. Adding reflective traffic signal backplates, upgrading pedestrian ramps to ADA standards, replacing and adding pavement and crosswalk markings, continuing the traffic signal timing optimization program, adding pedestrian signals in the median. So there's a 2-stage crossing because the road is wide in places. And the potential recommendations for phase 2 are relocating the traffic signal at Chantilly Plaza over to Galesbury Lane. It makes more sense to have the traffic light there. And adding a second westbound Route 50 left turn lane at Lee's Corner Road. Some of the issues they looked at, if you're going west on 50 and you want to turn on Lee's Corner Road, some people are getting to the access road and it all gets backed up there. So improvements to fix that. The problem is there's no construction dates, there's no funding. So at whatever time we move forward with some of these projects, we would need to apply for smart scale funding for the improvements. But at least there's a plan that's being developed for that. The I-66 express lanes are open. You see they're still doing work. They're supposed to be completed with that work in August. One of the things that they're doing right now, when I was coming over here, part of Poplar Tree Road is closed. If you would take Poplar Tree Road over to Stonecroft, it was a very wavy, bouncy ride. So they're going to have to tear up some of it and redo it and fix it to make it right. So they're working on that. And finally, the Bull Run Post Office through traffic restriction that has taken years to get re-implemented. VDOT Traffic Engineering received 19 comment letters that were all in favor of the restriction. So they decided they did not need a public hearing. VDOT Traffic Engineering submitted the required documents to VDOT's central office for their review and approval. And at this time, the process is on track for an August decision. So we're hoping that that stays on track. Okay. Going on to other topics. Eleanor C. Lawrence Park off of Olney Road. I don't know if any of you go over there and see it. The pond is on one side. On the opposite side of Olney Road from the pond, the Park Authority has a project called the Sully Woodland Stewardship Education Center. And all of that got delayed a little bit with all the supply chain issues. And so it's a sustainable facility. And there have private and corporate donors that are helping them with it. And it's going to be a state-of-the-art interpretive center. It will host educational programming, offer rental spaces, and serves as a gateway to the Sully Woodlands. It will be one of only 2 living certified buildings in Virginia and only one of 29 in the world. The building will be roughly 7,000 square feet and have 2 multi-purpose spaces, 1,400 square foot enclosed space and an 800 square foot open space. We had a groundbreaking last January, and they're hoping it's going to be done by the end of the summer. So it will be a really great educational place for kids and families. And then for the environment, we heard from people at our public hearing about supporting the Park Authority with what they were doing. So in the third quarter budget package, we had $900,000, and that will help the Park Authority with tree health on their parkland. And the board passed an ordinance to get rid of bamboo. And so this will help the Park Authority get rid of the invasive bamboo that we have. And then the FY24 budget had a position for the Park Authority for bamboo mitigation. I'm sorry, 3 positions, 1 for bamboo and 1 for forestry operations. I don't know if you have seen that there's an RFP that the Park Authority put out. Pat Harity on our board chaired the Sports Tourism Task Force, and I've been on that board with him. And part of that is to look at places where we can put sports facilities. Patriot Park opened up just a few months ago and off of Braddock Road near Willow Springs Elementary School. It is a beautiful facility. There's wonderful ball fields. They can have tournaments there. Community members can use it. There's a playground. There's a couple of snack bars. It really, really is a beautiful facility. And so the Park Authority has the request for information, and it's based on their master planning, what they want to be on different fields. And so that is out. Let me see. So they're looking for solicitation for a new facility to be developed as early as spring 2022. The request for information submissions are due September 19th. The purpose of the RFI process is to identify potential private and or nonprofit partners with the ability to develop, permit, construct, implement, manage, operate, and market a multi-sport complex to drive sports tourism and furtherance of the county's economic development goals. And so that's going on right now. So we'll wait and see. I don't know if anybody will have offers, and the Park Authority is handling that.
Wait. It's talked about extending Shirley Gate down to Patriot Park.
Mm-hmm. I don't know anything about that, Jeff. Yeah. I don't know what's happening with that. And then, as you know, we had our zoning ordinance Z mod, and we readopted that in May. And right now we're working on parking reimagined. Staff will be coming forward with that. We just authorized that at the board meeting on Tuesday. And so staff has made a lot of changes since they started this process. A couple of years ago, they've had a lot of community meetings. They've made a lot of changes. Right now, the Planning Commission meeting on that is going to be July 26th at 7:30. And we're scheduled to have the Board of Supervisors public hearing on September 26th at 4 p.m. I would encourage you to look. These are all the documents that are posted online about Parking Reimagined. It has the changes. I think there's a lot of things in the community that people are still talking about that were proposed in the beginning that have changed. So it's really good information. And staff has, they're not at the point to do a staff report on this. But one of the documents in here is, give me a second. Notable changes from the March 21st draft text. So this was first advertised for March 21st, and because of our zoning ordinance, we delayed this. And so staff has continued to make changes and adopt things. And so there's other documents in here that kind of give information about other localities and what we're doing. So there's a lot of information about this. Okay. And so has anybody been to the new Lidl that opened up recently over by the Costco in Chantilly? And so it's a new grocery option for people. I got to go there for the ribbon cutting. And Lidl is also over in the Centerville Square Shopping Center. If you look, there's construction going on there. They're going to put another Lidl in the shopping center there. And then I had never heard of this. Mike Coyle in my office told me Jollibee is opening up later in the old Burger King and what we call Fast Food Central. And that's a Philippines-based chain. So that should be opening up soon. They thought maybe in July they would open. There's a Sheets that we approved a long time ago. That should be opening in July on McLaren Road. And then across the street from my office, in the building that has newer stuff, Uptown Cafe opened there on May 31st. So we're definitely getting more choices for food. Okay. The board also at the meeting on Tuesday authorized, we want the courts to advertise for the bonds referendum. The school board has a bond every other year. And so this is an agenda item that's posted with our meeting materials from Tuesday. And so this would be a bond for $435 million for different projects. We are finally getting to Sully District schools. A lot of Sully District schools are newer than schools in other parts of the county because we developed later. So in this bond referendum, I'm going to tell you the schools in Sully District that stand to benefit. Construction funding for Brookfield Elementary School. That's a little over $53 million. Lee's Corner Elementary School construction at almost $52 million. And then they start with planning and design. So Cub Run Elementary, Union Mill Elementary, Center Ridge, Poplar Tree, Waples Mill, and Virginia Run. All of those schools will have planning money for renovations. And I know my kids went to Poplar Tree. It opened in 1990. So you can see how long it takes to get to the point where they can do renovations. And this is just planning money coming out of here.
So, yeah, cover on meaning
Center Ridge, Poplar Tree, Waples Mill, and Virginia Run. So-
Centerville Elementary. is in there,
Yes, Centerville,
Just Center
no,
Ridge.
just Center Ridge
Center Ridge, Poplar Tree, Waples Mill.
and Virginia Run. There's other schools, but we're finally getting to the point with Sully schools.
Matter of interest, the Land Use and Transportation Committee will be hearing the proposals for both Brookfield and
Mhm.
Lee's Corner at our meeting on the 17th of July.
Oh, good. I saw that on your agenda. There's one I missed. There's going to be planning money for Franklin Middle School too. And that's $8 million to do that. That, the planning and design. So that's the beginning of the process where,
Design of one school or?
no, for the renovation. Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry, the middle school was separate from the elementaries. Franklin Middle School too, yeah. Yeah, so it takes a while to do that. Just a couple of other things and then I'll open it up to questions. The plastic bag tax that we implemented, I know, people had concerns, but the real purpose of doing the plastic bag tax wasn't revenue, it was to change behavior. Microplastics, the plastic bags getting into streams. And so it went into effect on January 1st of 2022. The revenue that we're using for it has to be used for certain things. So the revenue is environmental cleanup programs, pollution and litter mitigation programs, educational programs on environmental waste reduction, and provision of reusable bags to recipients of SNAP or WIC programs. And so we're using the funding for that. In the first year of implementation, it generated about $2.3 million in revenue. And so the first wave of funds was used for storm drain education and labeling, waste reduction and recycling campaigns, waste reduction posters at bus shelters, waste collection at commuter parking lots and bus stops, volunteer stream cleanups, Operation Stream Shield, and provision of reusable bags to communities like SNAP and WIC recipients. And so we're working through that process. We hope that we get less funding, that more people use reusable bags. And so that's kind of an overview of things that are happening in different categories. And I will open it up. Oh, I do have one more thing. I'm sorry. I am on something called the Northern Virginia Regional Commission, and it is a group of localities in the region, and they have a demographer. Wasn't sure, I didn't expect so many people. I don't know if I have enough copies, But really, the region is doing really well. I think people have talked about it not doing well. And so this data reveals that the Northern Virginia region's labor force did not have as slow a recovery from COVID-19 as we previously thought it would be. And it will no longer take approximately 2 or more years to reach pre-pandemic levels as previously thought. Instead, the revised data reveals that pre-pandemic labor force levels were reached in March of 2022. As of April 2023, the labor force was 46,558, 3.3% higher than pre-pandemic levels. The annual change in the labor force from April 2022 to April 2023 was an increase of 50,245, which is 3.5%. And so the annual change in the labor force exceeded 50,000 in March and April 2023, growth amounts not experienced since October 2005. As has been noted before, the migration patterns into and out of the region have had a strong influence on the region's population and work trends in the past several years, and this dynamic is likely contributing to the strong regional recovery from the pandemic. So I have some copies of this. I don't know that there's enough, but it has information. And so this is the region for the population information. Okay.
So you're going to ask that if you want to ask a question, you come up to the microphone and introduce yourself, where you live, your name, and speak into the microphone so that the people on the screen at home can see you and hear you. I thank you for that. And if you're interested in speaking, raise your hand. I'll try to locate that. Okay, please. Yeah, as I said, stand, introduce yourself. Make sure you're on the screen and smile.
Oh, my gosh.
Oh, no, you're good to stand. Yeah. Right above the ear. And face the camera there and close to the microphone.
Oh, my God.
Okay?
I'm standing on one foot.
I know.
And okay?
Okay, Kathy, as the data centers, my name is Cynthia Shea. I live in the Pleasant Valley community. I think I know probably almost everybody here. So we're, as a community, we're kind of concerned about this rush to build data centers everywhere. And we wanted to try to get an understanding from you about the economic impact as to why data centers have to come in now. As we know, there is a retail sales and use tax exemption for data centers that are the larger data centers. And that exemption is up to 10 million per year. What data centers who qualify for the exemption get all their computer equipment, generators, AC, water tank, shelving, basically just about everything except for like fuel, to exempt from taxes. And then if they actually go over the 10 million, then they can seek approval from the Major Employment and Investment Project Approval Commission. So the new mega data center incentive program also includes up to 15-year extension on the exemption. So given these figures as to all the tax relief and exemptions that the data centers, especially the bigger ones, are getting, can you speak a little bit about why then the county feels that data centers are financially good for the county?
So I cannot address the specificity of what you said, Cynthia. I'm not aware of the program you're mentioning, and I don't know how it affects things here. So I am trying to reschedule a meeting with the Pleasant Valley community to talk about the data centers. So I'm not prepared tonight to have people with me that can address specific questions. And so we sent out 2 dates to the community. I don't know if anybody's here that can let me know where we are with those dates.
Church, right?
Okay, and so we have this room, my staff saved this room, if you.
This is a hot issue. We need it.
Okay, okay.
Place of worship.
And so, you know, I can't tell you if the things you're saying affect the data center that would be going in here or not. I don't know. Okay, and I don't know if there's state programs, so I would like to be able to come speak to the community. I would like to have the staff members with me and people can answer the specific questions. What I can tell you is that there is a tax benefit to having data centers, right? So much of our taxes are dependent on real estate taxes. The board had a goal that they haven't been able to achieve, to get 20% of the taxes to come from commercial, right? And then we see, what's happening with offices and people working from home. So typically, you're going to have a benefit from having a data center and the taxes from that, and that's why communities do them. I would disagree with you that there's a big push by the board to say data center, data center, data center. We know that data centers want to come in this area because they're here and they have fiber. But this is part of the process. We're going through this land use process. They have to meet certain requirements. There's public hearings, and we're going through this process right now.
So,
Oh, remember?
as
You
a
don't- you
follow-
got-
I think my voice is loud enough.
No,
As a
you're not on
follow-up
camera. You're not on camera.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, time. As a follow-up question, I did want to ask about the environment. I know you mentioned concerns about the environment. And I think a lot of us here are very concerned about the environment. And one of the things that we're also noticing, of course, given noise and data centers, and I would like to keep touching a little bit on this just because I'd like to hear what your thoughts are on the bigger data centers, because now that they're going mega, they're going from 2 stories, quote unquote, which is 35 feet each, to 3 stories, which is over 100 feet. They're requiring bigger and bigger or more and more generators, diesel generators and fans and such that make noise. So I'm trying to understand if the work group that the Board of Supervisors on May 9th directed county staff to research environmental issues with the data center. Do you have any information or feedback from that group yet? And
No,
when is that expected?
I don't. The board wanted it by the end of the year. That group is just being formed, so we don't have any information yet. I am not the expert in these issues, and that's why I want to be able to set up a meeting. I can tell you process. I can tell you how we do this. I can tell you how I do this, how we gather information. The staff provides a staff report. We listen to issues from the community. We see how the applicant is going to be able to mitigate issues. But to be frank with you, there's a lot of information out in the community that's not factual.
So as far as the staff report and things like that, we do want to make sure that someone is available to speak with us regarding things like the noise study, which is incomplete.
And so I think it's going to be really important that we ask the applicant to be at that meeting too.
Yes.
Because the applicant is the one that has that information.
Well, we.
So
we've already done that.
The
twice.
information that I can share is about our process, how we do this, and those pieces. And so we have staff, they do the staff report, they have the details, they can answer those questions. And I do think questions will come up that the applicant can answer. And so I think if you want to have a comprehensive discussion and be able to get information, that those of us that can answer different questions should all be in the room to answer those questions for the community.
And then how do we get on or get feedback to the environmental research that the work group is supposed to be working on? There is certainly a lot of information out there, and sometimes in discussions, things come up where people go.
Hold on. This is not working.
And so people, have an opportunity to maybe provide information that had not yet been thought about. We've certainly got information from the National Park Service, the National Science Foundation, Federal Highway Administration. So is there a mechanism for citizens to provide feedback to the work group?
Not the way it's set up right now. I don't have the details of how they're going to present that. They'll be presenting information to the board. They are just starting. They're going to be working with people in all those different areas and getting information. And so I don't have a specific answer. It's not like it's a public hearing. It's a work group that's gathering information.
Right. And who becomes involved in the work group? It's just county staff who's hired or?
Typically counties, well, it's county staff.
Right.
And typically they will work with people in the industry, other groups, whenever they have a work group and they do something, they reach out to get information. They just don't sit in a vacuum and say, this is what they think.
Sorry, I didn't mean to leave all the big questions. If anybody else has questions, please go ahead.
I have some questions. My name is Shelley Branch. I live in the Eastgate area. And I'm very concerned about the environmental impact that I'm already seeing happening from the data centers that have already sprung up around us. The decimation of big chunks of green trees, old growth trees that I know are so important for protecting us, giving us cool air, kind of shielding us as much as possible from the effects of climate change. And I'm wondering what actually is being done to, what kind of regulations are there that protect these green spaces?
So I do think it's going to be better if we have our data center meeting and I will have staff there. We have our zoning ordinance, we have regulations. There's requirements about how many trees have to be saved, what percentage of a property has to be open space. And so there are all those protections in place. I mean, the situation that you face is when somebody owns a piece of property, they have a right to develop it. Absolutely.
Right.
So there,
That's what our concern is, as our representative, how are you representing us in this process?
and so there are regulations, there are rules that people have to follow when they develop something. And so that's part of the process. That's why there's a staff report. And we go through that process to be able to see if they meet the standards.
But they've already started working. They're already starting to decimate areas. They're already starting.
Those would be separate, those would be a separate land use case, right? I don't know if you're talking in general, or I don't know if you're talking about a specific site.
Well, I'm seeing all kinds of areas near me, especially off of Route 50.
The one way down.
Well, I know that off of Stonecroft and Willard, there's now a new site that's been kind of cleared out.
But there's
It's very close to Cub Run.
there's one that's already built.
And there's one on
Way
50.
down
that's
in the
overbuilt.
West County on Route 50.
Yes, not too far from where the Costco intersection is. But all along Route 50, I see the yellow tape up and I see the diggers happening near Dulles Landing where the Walmart shopping area is. I noticed there's a for sale sign now in front of this beautiful patch of beautiful, forest. And I'm really concerned because, even in our Eastgate neighborhood, there's a still remaining, even though they're starting building some kind of I don't know, I understand there's gonna be a Silver Dollar Diner or something there.
I don't know.
So it's Pleasant Valley Way, the Loudoun County Pleasant Valley Way, and Eastgate Drive.
Is that in Fairfax
Right.
or Loudoun County?
It's Loudoun.
Okay, then I can't address.
I'm still gonna eat there, but that's a long count.
That is Loudoun. It's in a way, it's all.
Do you live in Loudoun County or Fairfax? Oh, okay. So
So
I can't address, yeah. I'm on the Fairfax County Board of Supervisors.
Okay.
I have nothing to do with land use in Loudoun County.
Oh, but even along 50, I just drove in today from DC along Route 50 because it's more scenic. How will that still remain scenic and beautiful and green? I'm really very worried about it. So that's why I was very happy to read what.
And Virginia is a state where people own property. They have property rights to develop their property. And that's why local government has standards to be able to regulate that.
Okay, but see, I'm hoping that the regulations are such that they will protect our environment.
Absolutely.
And also, the kind of electromagnetic fields that data centers could be producing and other kinds of.
Can't
things like
address
that.
any of that.
Well, that's why I came to.
Thank you so
bring up
much.
Stuff that
I have a
hoping will
comment
be
from
addressed.
Yeah.
the audience.
I just wanted to make
No,
one more
excuse
point
me,
about the
excuse me, excuse me.
is the fact that with the
Ma'am?
noise, it actually does affect the animals and the wildlife, and that will decimate forests there.
Let's not lose control over this
In
meeting.
Red Rock and Arizona.
Okay, I'm running the meeting, continue to interrupt,
Sorry.
right? So I have a comment from a person on attending virtually. So here's a question from Jim Hart. As to the procedure for data centers, Supervisor Smith voted last month for adoption of ZMOD 2.0, which has data centers as a by right use in several districts. No public hearing, no development conditions, no notice to neighbors, no opportunity to comment. Does she still support having data centers as a by right use despite the impacts on the environment and infrastructure? Why not require public hearings, case-by-case review with the opportunity to comment and impose development conditions and mitigate impacts?
The fact is, the new zoning ordinance ZMOD put in more regulations for data centers than we previously had in the 1978 zoning ordinance. I did not bring all that information with me tonight because I wasn't planning on having this discussion, but it is a false narrative that ZMOD loosened things up, when in actuality, ZMOD added more restrictions.
Thank you for answering the question. If there's anybody else online who has comments, please enter into the chat and I will attempt to bring it to the attention of Supervisor Smith. Would anybody else like to speak? If you would, raise your hand. Please, this person here and then that lady in the back, come up, make sure you're on the screen and you stand up and introduce yourself. No, you hit your hand up, so quickly go that way. Please come up. We can see you on the screen. You can see yourself if you're not on the screen. Okay, so your name?
My name's Dave Houston. I live in Pleasant Valley. I've been here about 33 years. I know Cynthia Shane. I was at one of the planning commission meetings and I haven't been very involved in local government, but I'm retired now, so I'm doing some more of this sort of stuff. And I understand very vague sense that these data centers are being put in our area because this is where the backbone is, this is where the fiber optic cable is, and that sort of thing. But I also think I understand that this particular data center is going to be 100 feet tall instead of 70 feet tall, and it's requiring some sort of variance for that, and we're against that. And what Cynthia Chang asked you was what you're doing for us, and I didn't get the answer to that question. We, as the citizens, we elect you, and you didn't come prepared with the things you'd like to come prepared with. But I think you should tell us what you're going to do for us as citizens in Pleasant Valley that have to look at this monolith and listen to it.
And
What are you, as our supervisor, going to do first? That's my question.
I was talking with somebody from your community the other day. It wasn't you, right? It was somebody named Dave. Okay, okay. And so in the conversation I had with a constituent from your community, what I told them is what my job is. So my job is, when the application comes to the board, it's going to go to the planning commission first. The planning commission is going to have a public hearing. There is going to be a staff report. There's going to be information. We're going to get information from the community. And then once the planning commission makes a recommendation, they might decide to approve it. They might decide to deny it. They might decide to delay their decision, but it will eventually come to the board with a decision, a recommendation from the planning commission. Once that recommendation comes to the board, then the board of 10 members, we will have a public hearing, we'll have the information, and we'll make a decision. And what I told your colleague is, if he had a land use case in front of the board, that he would want me to keep an open mind, to get the information and not prejudge a decision. And so I'm getting the feeling that people want to hear me say, I'm going to stop this. That's not my legal responsibility. My legal responsibility is to get the information, to listen to the data, to see if it meets the standards, to see if they've mitigated any issues. And so there's a lot of information here that I think people really need to get the factual information. I think they need to see the data from the applicant. I think they need to see the renderings. I think they need to see if it will be visible. I think they need to get the information about the noise studies. But there's been a,
I agree, I
Okay.
agree with all that,
Okay.
that's right, but this is my point. So far, I've watched you sit here and say, you don't have that information.
because it's early in the process.
I sat
It-
through through the planning commission, I'm a little jaded.
The planning commission hasn't had this
I
case.
sat through a 6-hour meeting with them,
Mhm.
and I watched as they ignored everything that was said in that meeting and recommended acceptance of GMAP mod as it was presented. And they did it in such a way that you couldn't understand what they were doing. Instead of voting on ZMOD, they voted on proposal 13456 passed, proposal 1457 passed. You were there, Cynthia. We all looked at each other and said, what are they doing? And they, through the whole discussion, everybody used common language and referred to it as ZMOD. And when it came time to voting for it, they spoke in a language that we didn't understand.
Okay.
So I say I haven't done a lot of these things, but I would feel much better if I would hear you say that, yes, get that church and have a meeting. I'll be there and I'll bring the information that you're looking for. I feel so far I've seen Cynthia bring a lot of information, but as far as attending the planning commission meeting and sitting here with you, I don't think I'm getting what I should be getting as a taxpayer in a board.
And that's why I'm trying to set up a meeting with your community so we can have that discussion. This is not that meeting. And we do need to get the factual information out. We need to hear about the case, right? And that's my job.
Are you going to get that factual information?
That's what staff and the applicant will provide, yes.
So at the next meeting, we're not going to hear, we don't have that information, we have it.
We will have information, yes.
And I guess my concern too is that we already had a meeting scheduled, which was canceled at the last minute, so you weren't prepared for that. I mean, if that.
Cynthia, excuse me,
Yeah,
I had a family emergency.
I understand.
No, I don't think you do. I had a family emergency that was stressful and critical and dangerous. And I hated to cancel that meeting. But I have seen the way this has been addressed. And any one of you that would have had what happened to me happen to you, I was very disappointed I couldn't be there. I had asked my staff if they thought they should come to the meeting, and my staff felt like the community wanted to have me at the meeting. So we canceled it. Emergency means you don't know something's going to happen to you.
But that's not my point. I sympathize with that. But the point was that that meeting was to happen that night. Were you not prepared for that? That's
should have that.
I think,
Why do you not have it now?
right.
because I'm not the expert in some of those issues. That's why the meeting was going to be set up with staff to be able to address the specific
And the
issues.
staff not here with.
This was not a meeting for the data center. This was a State of Sully meeting. And so if this was represented to the community as a meeting about the data center, that's not what this meeting was.
It was not, it was represented as a town hall. People could
It's a
not-
recommendation. State of Sully. Again, this is not the Land Use and Transportation Committee meeting, which was held a week ago Monday. This is the Sully District Council meeting, and we've asked supervisors to tell us the state of Sully. Your question is pertinent to land use. This is not the land use meeting. We
Point
have
of
two
order,
separate
yes.
meetings. Jay, go ahead.
These are citizens who are concerned about the state of Sully, the state of Fairfax County. Now, the questions I think are appropriate. If we don't have answers tonight, then we set up the meeting and we have the answers to those questions provided. I would suggest that you have as many experts as you need. There is a lot of facts and information these folks have. So I would hesitate to say that it's misinformation, because it is not. It has been very well researched and brought to bear so that they understand what's happening to them. But this is a topic about the state of Sully and the state of their investments in their homes. Things.
So the lady behind us back there, the blonde lady, remember stand up, come forward. Thank you. Introduce yourself.
Carol Ann Warnberger. I live in Pleasant Valley also for more than 35 years. And just as a little background, when I bought my house, the house, I had it built. And I specifically picked my lot and paid a premium for my lot because I backed up to parkland. And I was told that it's zoned for parkland, it cannot be built on.
Right.
That there's a stream back there, that there were several factors in why the county took that property and zoned it for parkland.
Right.
Now I'm hearing that zoning can possibly change.
That area,
How is that possible?
that area that's parkland is going to stay parkland. The applicant that wants to do the data center would use about, I think it's 12 acres of the property up at the front. And most of that property, they are looking to donate to the park authority if they can. And so most of that property won't be developed on.
However, if I'm looking out my back and I want to see this natural state that I have now, and I see this tall data center with lights at the top, or an aviation or airport authority would have to approve putting that in because of the flights that go past that area. I'm just wondering, what is the process for rezoning? What is the process for approving light patterns? Approving something of that size so close to a community? Not only does it affect our view of the area, but it also affects wildlife. There's so many variations of reasons why we would want to have a chance to speak our mind. When do we get that opportunity? If you get all this data that you're going to bring to the next meeting, is it going to be final? Are we just hearing
No.
this is this, and this is why we're going to go ahead with it? Or does the community get a say or a chance to speak their mind and be listened to and represented? We were hoping by someone of your capacity.
And so there is a process, right? And so I don't make up my mind about something outside of the process. So there will be a process. You're talking now, but there are formal processes with public hearings of
Part
sending.
of that formal process where,
Yes, you can.
whereby the decision is not yet firm.
A
It's not
decision
yet
is
made,
not made. A decision is not made.
But it's going to go to your council.
It's going to go
For
to
the
the
final
board of
decision.
the board of supervisors will make the final
So
decision.
you'll have an opportunity. to
There'll be a
speak.
public hearing, yes.
There'll be two
Okay.
public hearings.
Yes,
Planning Commission will have a public hearing. And the recommendation of the Planning Commission goes to the board, and that will be another public hearing. So there will be two opportunities. I think you get 5 minutes as an individual to speak before the Planning Commission, 3 minutes as an individual to speak before the board.
Okay.
If you have an organization, they get 10 and 5 respectively. If you have no organization, you're restricted as an individual.
and this is why I want to have the applicant come to the meeting. My job is not to defend what the applicant wants to do, right? And so you're raising issues that the applicant should have to answer. You want to know how much of it you will see. The applicant needs to tell you that. My job isn't to take their case and say, I'm going to defend it or not defend it, right? They need to present that information to you as the community.
And they have done that twice now, and that's.
They
why
were at
we
the
wanna
meeting
hear
I
it.
missed.
Right, and so
That's what I
you
heard.
missed that. I believe that we should get as many people in the room together. I should be there, the county staff should be there that works on the staff report, and I think the applicant should be there. Because I'm not gonna be the one to tell you, you're gonna see it or not see it. That's their job. That's their work. That's what they get paid to do.
But yes, they will see it, or they think it's.
Please, I somebody else is gonna speak next. Somebody over here had their hand up. Recognize them. Oh, okay. You passed, okay. Would anybody else like to speak who hasn't spoken yet this evening? Please, again, make sure you can be visible, speak.
Should be visible.
Yeah.
Your name?
My name is Scott Corbett. I did get a good chance to speak with you, and thank you for
You're welcome,
presenting
Scott.
tonight. I have been the person I've been coordinating care for the meeting. Sorry about the family emergency.
Thank you.
We will work to reschedule. We do have an
Okay.
email to the church.
Okay,
They have a committee process. They don't want the opinions of the church to be part of the community. They want to be related to God.
okay.
So I just need to get past that, but we will get back to
Okay.
time.
I appreciate that, Scott.
Inside the state of Sully, and my concern is the economic impact. When you represent that there's a staff report, it's completely null and void of any economic data. There's no economic impact. You started most of this meeting earlier today about the budget, where we are in process, the impact of that. I've looked at the governor's $38 million economic development package for the area. I've run my own numbers. When you look at water, road traffic, I believe it takes down the Sully district capability to live well by 2%. I also believe that it's going to take down 2% in air pollution. You've got diesel engines and other groups sitting right behind your neighborhood. I've got 2% in noise. I've got 2% in electric pollution, both static and RF. And I've got 2% in visual to the balance of one neighborhood. So I look at that as a 10% loss just for the Pleasant Valley neighborhood. On average, our homes are 650,000, so it's going to go down to about 580,000. What I calculate just in the first year is a little over $400,000 tax loss to the county and $35 million in retail, residential home value loss by having this type of zoning in there. And so what I'm wanting to know is how can you bring those numbers to our agenda meeting on the 12th or the 26th so we can look at the economic impact of Sully, not just the building of one building, but the impact across the 545.
And so, Scott, you're making assumptions that we don't have a basis for. When staff is going to do their staff report, they base that on the land use issues, right?
Right.
And so they don't, you're making an assumption that the value of your house is going to go down. And there's nothing to base that, right?
Well, based on the staff report, that those are all qualities of air, water, electric that are changing. And so if you take a look at the zoning, which would be the original auto plaza, as an example, they would pay, let me give you my, my NBA hat on that. They would be paying over $1.4 million in county tax for cars. They'd sell, that extra dealer would sell 4,000 cars a year in that dealer plaza instead of a data center. The data center that's on the board right now has got a $10 million exemption per year.
And I can't address any of that, Scott. I
You
don't
can't.
know if they have that exemption. We can get the information for
When
you.
we asked the
Yeah.
applicant, that we were specific,
Right.
they said it was a cash cow. I asked what the projection is. Every person does a projection or a forecast, of even if they're going to change something in their home, let alone what it would be in the business. They didn't have it. But when you look at the app, it's $10 million, no tax to the county. That doesn't include the 1.7% in auto tax. 60% of the cars stay in the county they're purchased in. You'd have over $10.5 billion in county tax coming in on the autos that are purchased over the last 3 years of that auto park came in new. I believe that the Sully district status should include some type of planning for the 12th or 26th meeting, so the district could understand and the citizens can understand their financial impacts as they live here as a resident.
Yeah, and I would tell you, I'm not sure that that's information that I will be able to get. Okay, I will ask about that, but the assumptions that you're making, that's not what land use staff is going to do. Right? You're making assumptions if that auto dealership went in. I would tell you the auto dealership would have a bigger environmental impact than a data center would have with the vehicles coming in. So there's just a lot of issues there. And I will ask about the assumptions you're making, but they're assumptions that I don't know what they're
Right.
based on.
We would certainly just respect the fact that we can try to get a sense of the numbers. Assumptions have to be made on either side. I mean, that's why you peg things. And that's why currencies have those based on the currency of a country or a situation. So as situations are planned for the development, it should also be in the economic report where that could come out. That's just what I believe could add value to the meeting. It won't just.
Right.
Facts.
And there won't be an economic report. If you could send me that information, I'd appreciate it.
Okay,
Okay.
I'd be glad to share this, so
Thank
I'll
you.
give it to you.
And just to clarify, the
Thank
data
you, Kathy.
center has more of an environmental impact because of the generators, the 27 generators, 135,000 gallons of diesel fuel that could spill the 13,500 gallons of diesel exhaust fluid, and an unknown amount of coolant for the air conditioning units. All of those actually do add to an environmental impact that the auto dealership does not have. So just to clarify that for everybody.
We probably have air conditioning, coolants, impact also.
But not to the extent that data centers do. You know anything about data centers?
They're going to be water. Water.
Right.
So there's going to be an impact for water.
Are there any other topics that you would like to have Kathy address? Over here, Jay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Jay Johnston from Virginia Run. I got a couple of questions. This goes back to your comments about the parklands that we're looking for new sports facilities. What's the process for that? And where would those locations possibly be?
I
Do you have
have,
any information?
I have, and the Park Authority did a press release on it, Jay.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't know if it's on the park website. To tell you the truth, okay. So they put, Mountain Road Park, which is on Braddock Road. Halifax Park, that's on Bull Run Post Office Road. Rock Hill Park, these are only the Sully ones. I don't have the press release. Rock Hill Park, that's on Old Lee Road.
Does that one on Bull Run Post Office Road back up to Virginia Run?
I am directionally challenged, Jay. Okay. So I can't answer that clearly, but it's all
I
in
would
that
be very
area.
interested in knowing.
It's all in that area. And so those are all based on the master planning that the park authority's done. They have other parks that were in the request for information that are in other parts of the county.
How about the young lady back here that parkland in her? What's the name of the parkland?
Oh, well, it's Fairfax County Parkland behind the Pleasant Valley.
It's only I mean, there's nothing in it. Yeah,
Nothing there? Okay.
yeah, yeah.
Do you support a homesteader's tax relief?
You have to explain to me what that is.
Well, it's for senior citizens who have decided to reside here and remain here,
Mhm.
who are in their retirement years and would like to remain in Virginia, like to remain in Fairfax County. There are other states and other localities, townships, in bureaus, et cetera, that have a tax relief for homestead. These are people that have been there for 20, 25 years and decided to remain and stay in the county because they like where they live. But the increases that we've seen in the housing costs, the increases we've seen in taxes, the increases we've seen in personal property taxes, go on and on, are forcing senior citizens out of this area because they can't afford to stay here.
And so that's why in fiscal year 22, we expanded tax relief for seniors. And so there was an expansion again this year, and then we did add a tax deferral program that we never had before. And
But
so
it's
with
an
the,
by application.
yes,
Okay.
yes, yes. So we did increase the levels of money that you can have when you apply for that. So we did change that program over the 22 and the 23 fiscal
Okay.
years.
Let's step top. When we had the school board here, they briefed us their budget.
Okay,
One of the things that was briefed, and we also received another budget brief, that there was about $80 million kind of left in the budget to be used by the Board of Supervisors to allocate out. What has happened with that $80 million? Is anything?
oh, not the school budget. You're talking about
Fairfax County budget?
Fairfax County
Yeah.
budget. So that was part of the funding we put in when we balanced the budget. So part of that was the $0.015 that we reduced the real estate tax rate. And then part of that funding went to do the 5.44% market rate adjustment increase for our employees and for the funding that we provided for the police salaries. And so that money got used in all those different pieces.
But that tax relief on the millage rate, was that for this year or was that for 22?
That's for
For 23?
yes.
Okay. You mentioned environment and how concerned the Board of Supervisors is about the environment. There is an environmental impact that will pretty much destroy a stream valley because of the 28 bypass. And it seems that Fairfax County has said, that's a Loudoun County initiative. We're not overly concerned with it. We don't seem to get involved in it. Prince Roy Homes,
Yeah.
Prince William County.
Yeah.
We don't seem to get too involved. So I'd really like to better understand why it appears that Fairfax County is giving kind of a hands-off approach. They're having no meetings in Fairfax County, residents.
That's
to
not
talk
true,
about-
Jay.
I haven't seen.
That's
that.
not true.
Okay.
Um,
And
so, go ahead.
next point, no, just clarify for me.
So, man, back when I first got on the Board of Supervisors in 2016, 17, Prince William County was looking at what they could do because Route 28 is so backed up. And so they had a study, they had about 17 different versions of how they could improve the road and what they should do. And when they went through this process, they came up with a solution that I frankly didn't really like. And that was their preferred solution. And so they have been going through a process. When they first were having their meetings about this, and I'm sorry I didn't bring the dates, they had a community meeting about this. And I told them they had to have a community meeting in Fairfax County. And so we had, the first one of those was at Centerville Elementary School. And then there was,
That's
Right.
my whole point.
Right.
It just appears that Fairfax County has backed away from it
no, the
and
fair.
allowed them to
No.
orchestrate.
No, Fairfax County staff has been working with the Prince William County staff. They have provided feedback. They've talked about what things are acceptable and not acceptable. Prince William County is still in the process of developing that. So the last meeting that was the public information meeting that was at Centerville Elementary School was April 19th. At that point,
What year?
this year, yeah. At that point, they were at 30% design and still trying to work through what they were going to do. And when they did that presentation, one of the things they realized with the alignment where they were going to take the road over the bridge, not the main one on 28 off to the side, they were going to have a bigger impact to make a bigger bridge to get out of the floodplain. And so they are still looking at this. They're not at a point, I mean, they were back in April at 30% design. I haven't had any updates since then of where they are with this project. This is the schedule they said they had. Design and engineering from 2021 to 2024. Right-of-ways and utilities from 2025 and 2026. And then construction 2026 to 2028. I don't know if they will stay on track for that. County staff, and I've talked with county staff, has shared where we have concerns with their project. But they are not far with this project yet, and I think they're working through. They have a lot of issues to do, a lot of issues. And so, you know, I am following this, and county staff is following this, and I've insisted that when they do their public information meetings in Prince William, that they have to do them in Fairfax County too, and we have done that too.
Why aren't we initiating those meetings
Because
for us?
it's not our project.
But it's our property. They're coming through Fairfax County.
Absolutely, and that's why I've said the meetings have to be in Fairfax County. But they're the ones that are presenting, and our county staff has been briefed as they've gone on.
Last point. I think you've heard, there's a lot of folks here that are very concerned about data centers.
Yeah, absolutely.
There is an extreme need on your part, on the Board of Supervisors and Planning Commission's part, and the vendor, to speak honestly, truthfully, and factually.
Mhm.
I'm somewhat appalled, being a financial minded person for 50+ years in government, that Fairfax County has not done an economic impact study or some sort of business case analysis to understand the impact financially to Sully, Fairfax County, the state, more importantly, the impact to citizens. I believe that that is the role in your own comprehensive plan to save for the safety and health of the residents. I don't think not having that kind of information available is supporting that mantra that's established in the comprehensive plan. It's important to these folks because of the investments that they've made in their homes. It's important to others. Parkstone, all the building has gone underneath the flight paths. I won't go into that again, but these are areas where I think it has been viewed by some that we're not being listened to. That you may say you hear us, but I don't know that the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission understand and comprehend the importance that some of these things bring to the citizens. We don't speak just because we want to be heard. We speak because it hurts. It's important that these folks are listened to and that they're heard by the Board of Supervisors, by the Planning Commission, and by staff. Sometimes staffs, and I've been on a number of staffs at government levels, and they'll say whatever they have to get the work done. And sometimes they run out of time, sometimes they run out of expertise, sometimes they run out of the skills necessary to get what they need and to satisfy all the requirements and all the messages. So I'm just asking you, if this meeting comes off, it better be prepared because the folks are upset.
Thank you, Jim.
I have, before we go back to the audience here, there's some questions from the peanut gallery over here. So let me ask the folks up here. The second question, the question is whether or not Supervisor Smith supports having data centers as a by right use, or whether we should have public hearing with notice and opportunity to be heard and development conditions to mitigate projects. What should be the procedure be, CMOD and by right, or a public hearing?
Jeff, could you just do that again, please? It was hard to hear. Just, Gally, could you just read it again?
I will read it again.
Thank you.
The question was whether Supervisor Smith supports having data centers as a by right use, or whether we should have a public hearing with notice, opportunity to be heard, and development conditions to mitigate impacts. What should be the procedure? CMOD and by right, or a public hearing? Now, this is different than what we're talking about in the meeting that we had over the last 2 months, because they're asking for a change in the plan. This is by right, which means no change. So this is not conditional on what you're talking about, but if somebody else had parcel wanted to develop it by right, data center might be included. What we heard before, that was not by right. That's why they had to come back and ask permission and show us all of the permissions. So there's a difference between what's being asked about here and what we saw in May and June. So Supervisor,
And so the one issue with the question is the assumption that ZMUD means by right, and that is not factual. There are certain zoning districts that if they follow certain regulations, they would be by right. And so there is the situation, the data centers that are going up on Route 50 near Avion, those were by right, okay? If they do want a variance or an exception, it's different. I don't have the chart in front of me. I think one of the reasons that I signed on with the chairman and Supervisor Stork to have the work group is that there's a realization that we need to look at the regulations we have and see if we need to improve them and what else we need to do. And so anytime you're doing something, you have continuous improvement, you look at things and you change that. The data center that you're all here about is not by right. We're looking at it, we're going to have discussions, we're going to learn about it, right? And so I think that's why I'm very supportive of this work group to see where we need to change what we're doing.
But there are several properties right behind us that are even closer to our community that are vacant at I-5 as well as I-3. So they are by right if there's.
Not necessarily.
okay, so additional questions that we have here. Okay, another question is it the opinion, your opinion that the auto dealership has a bigger environmental impact than the data center with 20 or 27 diesel engines, generators, and the ongoing deliveries of on-site storage of diesel fuel, and the unlimited consumption of water and electricity? Is that conclusion of the relative impact something that has been evaluated by staff?
No.
Okay. The next question, the Route 28 bypass is not on the adopted Fairfax County Comprehensive Plan, which includes not the bridge, the widening, the new route, or the intersection of Route 28. How can the project go forward without an actual public hearing and an amendment to the adopted comprehensive plan with an opportunity for citizens to comment and object to the environmental impacts, design, and impact on historic resources?
So I know Mr. Hart has asked that question before, and it's been answered, and it's been answered by Tom Bashadney that the comprehensive plan isn't the issue in that, and we're looking at all the other pieces with that project.
Another question. Conservation easements create numerous public benefits, yet there is no public notification of process to entertain revisions requested by landowner and developers. To illustrate the gravity of this position of this policy lack, in February 2022, the Board of Supervisors expunged, gave back to developers a 2.5 acre matching conservation easement established along Angelo Ranch decades earlier to protect groundwater resources and environmental corridors in Sully and the Mill. Developers got a mega mansion house on a lot of the deal. Citizens received nothing. Due to the lack of transparency, the publicity, a publicly vetted process, citizens have had their assured environmental benefits erased without any public hearing. Lacking policy for easement revisions, any and all future conservation easements under the control of Fairfax County offer zero assurance to citizens that any environmental benefits will in fact endure. Given the board's action in February 22, conservation easements are quite literally a tax-free land bank boondoggle for developers. What's the policy?
I can't address that, Jeff. If you want to send it to me,
I will
I'm
forward you
not,
the comments.
I would appreciate
I
that.
need to read you the comments that are written here because the people in the audience have the right to ask questions.
Yep.
Okay, so I will provide you a written comment of the chat if I can figure out how to save it to my desktop.
Okay.
Okay,
that
I'm
works.
pretty sure I know how to do that. All right, all right. With that in mind, is somebody over here has not asked a question before we ask people who have spoken before. So please, again, come back so you can be shown and seen on the screen.
Like standing up, I'd like to sit down with Kathy and have a conversation, but
Introduce yourself and where you live.
I will do that. My name is Keith Elliott, and I am not in Pleasant Valley, but I am a concerned citizen here. Been here, I see people say 33 years or 35 years. I'm glad to say I've been out here 36 years. So I moved to London town, West London town in 1987, and been out here ever since then. So a couple things, I'm glad to hear, Kathy, you're here, so thank you very much. It was well attended, and I do appreciate your time. I love the fact that you're working on the ballparks and things like that. I can remember the days when I was coaching, there was never enough units, never enough units. The thing that they need to learn and what we got to try to do is get the fields to be turf versus grass. They get chewed up and torn up. So that's something I would love to hear you try to work on and make sure that kind of happens. But just on a couple quick notes, I think the data centers, and as Jay eloquently said, I really think you need to hear the people, right? There's some serious concerns over their properties, right? And the base, investment that we have is our homes. And gosh, I drive Loudoun County. I know it's Loudoun, all right? But good gracious, you can drive from Creighton Farms, Willisford, all these wonderful, beautiful neighborhoods. And then a mile away, you're looking at a data center. I would hate to see that here in Fairfax. It would just decimate, I think, real estate values and stuff. So keep that in mind and do, listen to them. I want to piggyback on Jeff's, because I was at the Z-Modest. I spoke at the board meeting, as you know. On Jeff's comment about the by right, I understand that. I thought the by right allowed them to just go in there and put whatever they wanted. So if I'm incorrect, and I think the people here would like to know, you're saying that it's a little bit, what was the word you used? It was a little bit restrictive, a little bit more restrictive. So if there's more restrictions on it, I think it would be good to know, for each of us to know. And then just a personal note for me as a resident, I use that giant shopping center over there at Braddock and Stone Road. That's my shopping store. Virginia Bagel has got the best bagels in town. Matsushishi's got the best sushi there. Dr. Skinner's a good dentist. Dr. Neiman is my doctor. I mean, Domino's Pizza was there because my 6-year-old wants pizza. You really can't put a drive-through unit in. And I would love to hear what your thought is on that, because there's just no room for that at all whatsoever.
So that went away. They
Is
withdrew
it
that.
gone? They withdrew?
Permanently? So for those of you who are not here,
What's
at
that?
the land use meetings of that topic, we had some, again, with pitchforks and,
Do the field.
shovels. So
They
you can
withdrew
understand.
the case.
I'm
I'm sorry, Jeff, I didn't hear you.
I said, when we had our land use and transportation meeting on the McDonald's, we had a similar crowd on pitchforks inside. Okay, so you understand that there are items where we get crowds, and other nights we have 4 people. All right, so just for the sake of, I have some other comments that if you're
And
finished.
just one last question. I think the county should be involved with that 28 bypass. And I think,
We have been.
all right, but there's owners there that are losing properties and things, and
It,
to sit around, I think what you said with Jay was that you're letting Prince William do it and then hold meetings to the public in Fairfax.
Fairfax County Transportation staff is involved in the process. They meet with the Prince William County Transportation staff. They're definitely engaged in the process. And if the project does come into Fairfax County, and if anybody has to lose property, there's a process for that. People get paid for their property. There's negotiations. Everybody's rights are protected through this process.
Want to make sure.
So,
That was it.
thank you.
Thank you, Kathy.
You're welcome.
And some of you may be aware, the county is renaming some of the major arterials, 29, 50, and taking away the honorifics of our Confederate predecessors. So the road that goes from Alexandria out west to Winchester in Fairfax City is, I think, Little River Turnpike. Out west of West Loudoun, it's being called Little River Turnpike. And in my mind, that would be a perfect name for it in Fairfax as well, because that was the name before we decided to name it for these Confederate people back during the time of integration. So that would be a thought that, that we ought to use that name rather than just call it Route 50, because that's redundant.
Already been decided, Jeff.
And that next question that is in here is also are we going to change things like Lee Road and Old Lee Road? Because I think those roads refer to the Lee property that is now Sully Plantation and not the general came a generation after.
So there are only two roads that the Board of Supervisors decided to change the name of. One of them is Route 50 and the other one is Route 29.
Thank you. So none of the other ones are.
No.
The last one is, I commend the decision to keep us a Sully. Okay, with that, another question. The audience is a little shaky, but did you say that the drive-through McDonald's was withdrawn? I thought it was just deferred.
No,
So
they withdrew it.
it was withdrawn.
Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Okay, so if there are other questions, again, I know I'll get back to you. Anybody else wishing to speak who has not yet spoken? No, you put your hands down.
I just want to make a comment.
Okay, if that's not the case, then I will read. Oh, Bonnie, you
I'm just thinking it would be good for transparency if people would know the makeup of the work group members in the, who are considered in the data center. For example, like if you have a whole bunch of developers who ties, to data centers, something on that work group that can skew the results.
Okay. I get frustrated when there's an underlying assumption that people don't speak honestly about what they're doing and providing information. And so when you have this viewpoint that somebody is going to skew information, it doesn't get us to a good place.
That's what I'm
That-
hearing.
That's not the expectation. People are professionals, Bonnie. And when there are professionals involved in a work group, their responsibility is to provide the facts and the data of how it works. It's not skewing viewpoints.
I think they're wondering who's providing the staff people that.
And I don't, staff is just putting that together. I don't have the list of the work group. But, we're all in a lot of danger if we don't think that people are talking to us honestly and openly. And when the board hears the land use case and the planning commission hears the land use case, and we're getting the facts of what's going to happen with that from the applicant. Because if the board and the planning commission feel like applicants are lying to them about what's happening, there's going to be some big trouble.
But they have a vested interest to present their thing.
They have a vested interest to present the facts of their case. Not a narrative of their case, the facts of the case. This is the transportation study. These are my setbacks. This is how high I'm going
But
to
does the
be.
county examine that to make sure that the guy really is?
That staff, that's why staff does their staff report. They compare the case to the standards. And that's what the staff report addresses. And so when you read staff reports, sometimes you'll hear in the staff report, they have not met this standard. Okay, they have met this standard. We want them to improve this. This is something we think they're not doing right. And so it's all that type of information.
It's kind of a new thing.
No, no.
For the county. Yeah.
What is a new
Bonnie,
thing?
That's why at the land use and transportation committee meetings, when we refer a case to with our recommendations, we say pending staff reports recommendations. And if the land use and transportation committee says we have no objections, and then staff comes up and says, we have objections, those become our objections as well, without us actually having to say them. And we ask then the proponents to come back to the land use and transportation committee and ask and tell us how they're going to address those land use issues that the planning commission, that the staff has brought up. So our approvals are never unconditional, they're conditional upon a positive staff report. Jay, you got a comment?
Yes, I will tell you that to support a little bit of what Bonnie is saying. When questions are presented, we get a little bit of hemming and hawing. For example, is it 20 or 27 diesel engines? They don't know the answer. What is the level of water consumption? They don't know the answer. What is the level of electricity? What would be the impact if the electricity in Fairfax County or Dominion would go down? How long would your generators run? They can't give us an answer. There are a number of questions that we have presented to them, not just to the data center, but to a lot of the applicants. where they don't clarify or give us the exact factual information. Some of it is based on assumptions, some of it is based on what they believe to be true, based on assumptions that they make. And we all know what assumptions are. So I think we have to be very careful with the way the case is being presented by the applicant. I'm not saying that they're lying to you, but consultants will tell you a little bit about exactly what you want to hear. And the applicant will do the same. They will tell you exactly what you need to hear in order to get them through a process.
Judge, Steve Jordan, Virginia Chase.
He needs to be in the camera.
Hold on. If you would move in a little further, that way, where do you want? Where do you want? The same issue, everybody else. There you go. A little bit further, there you go.
I think the issue that the applicant is he hasn't identified a customer. So, and so that's the issue. Is that it's basically a build to suit. And so I don't know, so that's the issue. Now, I don't know how you go about doing it, but
All they had to do was tell us, build the street, and it's a range.
What would be going on if this guy didn't have a customer?
he said he didn't have a customer.
We need access.
Okay, all right, so I have another comment from the Roy. I will read the comment. In the case of Parking Reimagined, developers are providing anecdotal standings to staff. Where is the hard third-party data? Where is our county's economic development commissioner these days? Okay, and there's another question such as, what is the distance of the data center perimeter to the cover run stream? And could the person whose email address is 2lanefun@outlook please identify themselves in real life, because that doesn't tell us who you are. And we appreciate your cute alias, but please identify yourself. All right, Eugene Hunt, thank you very much for telling us who you are. But here are the two questions. So the question was, in the case of Parking Reimagined, developers are providing anecdotal standings to staff. And do we have hard third-party data such as from the County Economic Development Commission?
Jeff, I'm not sure I
And
understand.
they're
the
saying is that
question.
they can develop more land and it's better for them if they have less parking. And so the question is, the Economic Development Commission give us standards for that type of information so that we can vouch that they'll make. I think that's the question that's being raised.
Yeah, I'm not sure I can address the question that way. So the one thing I know is when a developer is doing parking, especially if it's like the underground parking, there's a cost to that, right? And so, and I can't tell you what the cost is per parking space, right? And so if they have a reduction in parking space, that is going to help the cost of the project, which will reduce the price of the housing.
But isn't that providing of a private good impact the public good? If in fact we allow people, developers not to provide parking, then we are putting the onus on the county to provide the public transportation that the lack of private vehicles inherent in the lack of parking implies that we're going to have to provide. If we say that 50% of the people are going to be using public transportation, is our public transportation good enough at that site to allow people to get there 24/7 by public transportation? Because we're getting rid of the PREVs.
Those are all the questions with parking reductions. So a number of years ago, in Trinity Center, there was an apartment building coming in, and they came and they wanted a parking reduction as part of that process. And so staff presented it to me. We had a discussion about it, and staff was willing to do more of a parking reduction than I was willing to do, because I know in Trinity Center, we don't have enough buses. And so we got to a level that it was a reasonable parking reduction that made sense, but it didn't go through too far. And so a lot of these parking reductions will come around in part of the land use process. And those are some of the changes that you'll see happened with parking reimagined. So there's more of a discussion about that. So there is, I mean, you talk about the right sizing of parking. You know, we've seen what has happened from the townhouses that were built in the 80s and in that time frame where there wasn't enough parking. And I think that's one of the good additions that was added to Parking Reimagined, is that staff has come up with an easier way for those neighborhoods, if they want to add more parking now, a simpler process for them to be able to do that, recognizing that. But what happens with Parking Reimagined isn't changing things that exist, right?
One of the other things that we've noticed, especially in my community, is that bus service is mutable,
I'm sorry,
changeable.
right?
And for example, in the most recent bus system redesign, when they opened the Wheelie Avenue extension further west, they removed the bus that went on Kenmore Circle in our subdivision. Therefore, half of our subdivision that was within a quarter of a mile of the bus is now within 3/4 of a mile of the bus. And the service is going over there. And in that case, if you give lower parking requirements because a bus service exists, that bus service, as we found, can be removed. And now you're faced with people who used to be able to take the bus, but the bus service has been decommissioned or moved someplace else. And now there's an expression I won't use, they're in trouble. Okay? So my point being is that fixed rail bus rapid transit is usually considered to be more permanent than a bus route, which can be changed. I took a picture of the signs in our community which says bus stop to be discontinued next week. And published that in my next door and saying, if you're dependent on this bus, be aware.
And so was the bus stop moved to a different location?
It was, no, that part of the street has no bus service it used to have. That was, it's on a different street. It goes down Stoneheader rather than going around Kimber Circle. But that route existed back when the Metro bus service was providing that. And is that back in the 80s or early 90s before it was taken over by Fairfax Connected? So that service had been there for over the course of 2 millennia.
Right, and so that's part of the process that the county staff goes through when they look at bus routes and they're tweaking bus routes and they get community feedback to see, you know, how can we change the bus routes? And then part of that decision is, do we put more money in to do more or not?
Well, I was
Right.
but my point being is that if we reduce the parking requirements because it's bus service, there's no guarantee that bus service will be there and the people might suffer damage.
And so it's definitely a balance of how much of a reduction you do.
Let me see if there's any other comments here. I haven't got any comments since Eugene came to say. All right, over here, and I'm gonna say that if there are more questions about the data center, we're gonna ask you to defer that one to the meeting that Kathy will be holding, which is subject on that matter, because Kathy's indicated tonight twice or 3 times that she doesn't have the resources at this meeting to answer them. And the third item is that even though Land Use and Transportation Committee, excuse me, will be having its third meeting on this topic on the 17th of July, when we come for a vote on that matter. If you follow our agenda and meeting notices, you'll see a proposed motion that's being circulated and will be in the agenda for that 17th July meeting. It's already been written and I will post it. Again, if anybody wants to see the video that those last 2 meetings, they're also available, links to it on tonight's agenda, which are available through our website. Go ahead.
Thank you, Jeff. I'll just try to stay within your parameters on that. It looks like to me Pleasant Valley is a state of concern. You're our Sully district representative. I was a broker of good information to try to help get the first meeting set up. I'd like to do that again with my community. I've been here 26 years as well. I understand the values of that. What I'm kind of asking is good housekeeping or clear direction. What you believe would be a good part of use of your agenda for that meeting. I'll let the citizens organize around wherever that might be, so you can collect the data that you need, right? Because somebody has to make assumptions. Somebody has to take a leap into that behavior, that change could impact this or thus and such. So do you have like a grading scale, or do you want to wait on this? So is it economic, 20% of the time in economics, 20% in zoning process? How do you believe that agenda should come together so we can get the right meeting? Because I do believe the church will have 200, 300, 400 people at that type of a venue.
Or at least,
Well, yeah.
That would be,
I don't know how many people will be there, so don't speculate.
it could be.
But it will be a fair amount.
Scott, I'm not sure I know what you want to get to. So I think we should have a conversation offline.
Okay,
Okay? I think that would be helpful.
be glad to do it. We can come to your office and try to develop that use of time and information gathering.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I just have one last thing. As far as the noise study goes, and I have been trying to get with Evan Pritchard, who had responded to me, and his response was that the 20 diesel generators in the noise report versus 27 engineers assured me that doesn't really matter. Noise is cumulative, so there's a formula that noise will, you have two units of something emitting 20 decibels each, the sound will be 23. So it does matter. So could you please, as a request, to ask them to update the noise study so that it is reflective of the 27 generators? He said, oh, my engineers assured me, but that's a lot of hand waving and that's not in writing. We would like to see a noise study that's updated with the proper parameters that have been laid out in the SOJ as well as the staff report. Thank you.
are there any other questions here? If not, there's one more over here. Yes, from Loudoun County.
I feel myself to be part of Sully just.
Oh.
Where exactly is this data center? Is
It
it?
doesn't exist.
Not in-
Oh, all right, because I know they're doing something on Stonecroft and Willard. They kind of,
Now, this is theoretically off of the large car park where 6 or 8 cars parks are located dealerships. And it's behind that and Cub Run Street Valley. They're gonna shoehorn it in.
Gigantic flag, it's
yeah,
that
that's my neighborhood, so I belong here.
Okay.
Also, I wanted to ask, but I think you may have addressed it. So how can one find out when, for example, the Land Use and Planning Commission are meeting and, you know, what they're discussing and?
That information is.
On the-
Kathy, I think
on the
you're
Fair-
best to answer
On
that.
the Fairfax County website.
So it's the Fairfax County website. Oh, and my last point, I actually wanted to agree with Bonnie, but I think it is useful to know what the qualifications of the professional qualifications for the staff members are, like what kind of fields they're coming for, what's their area of expertise.
About the staff members, I was just asking of the members on the board.
All right, what's the difference between the work group and the staff members?
You've got all the county staff, but these are just particular work group.
For the data center?
Yeah.
Or so,
I don't know what.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's not a bad idea because, you know, it is good to know what kind of expertise they have. You know, like Jeff mentioned, I hope I got your name right. They may not necessarily, you know a lot about diesel engine.
I'm gonna change this up here, and this is a map from the presentation that was linked to our agenda from this month's land use and transportation meeting. And if I can get my mouse keep working, okay, you can see the area, it's kind of darker right over here. And this is the parcel in question, just about here. It's on the west side of the car park area. And, well, hold on now. Okay, so that's where we're talking about. We're not doing any discussion of this. This is just for the question where was it? Information purposes only. With that,
I have a say.
excuse me,
Can I say one more thing?
if it's on this case, no, because it's not going to talk, we're not going to talk about it now. Go ahead, sir.
No, I wanted to address what this lady asked. And I say I'm retired now. I think I've probably been around longer than anybody else here. Lives. And I spent a lot of time listening to Fox News and CNN and going back and forth. And I can tell you that we're living in an age where taxpayers and voters trust their government less than they trusted their government back during the Civil War. Now, as residents, as residents here, we're kind of trying to figure out how far that trickles down. And she was curious as to the makeup of the panel. And you, I think, I'm not putting words in your mouth, you assured her that you select professionals and that they work with data and they work with the hard figures. And when I hear someone say that, I always think of what Winston Churchill famously said. He said there's three types of lies. There's lies, there's damn lies, and there's statistics. Ronald Reagan, more recently, said I can tell when my staff is lying to me. They bring statistics. So this, what she's asking is a good question, because if Putin was on that working group, as a taxpayer, I would be more concerned than if it was Zelensky on that working group. So I sympathize with you, and I also would like to know that towards that, the last meeting that we had in here, we had a very eloquent gentleman stand up and talk in favor of the data centers, and he wasn't being disingenuous, but he was good. And at the end of it, he said, I live in Pleasant Valley. He's a neighbor of ours. He said, but I build data centers for a living. So that guy who's on that work group, I would look at that work group with a jaundiced eye. So you didn't look at that question like it was, and I don't think. And
So
I
why,
think it was.
but I have to ask the question, if somebody's an expert in something and they have the information about how it works, why do you look at the information they would provide with a jaundiced eye?
Because of that person's background. If that person that came with all that wonderful data was the guy that builds data centers for a living, there's a reason why you have a work. If it was just.
Right, it's
if it
not-
was just data,
It's not a work group of people with data centers, but you get your factual information from people that have the
Well,
experience.
that's right, but that was, I'm just saying, her question was very legitimate, and I don't feel we gave it the consideration that it should have had.
I'm going to ask this behind over there.
I just have a request. I know you're going to gather a lot of data for the next meeting. You are prepared to address these issues. Is it possible to get data with regard to the fact that a data center would use quite a bit more energy? And with that,
You're talking about data center.
Remember,
we're not
we're not asking that.
No, I'm not asking now. I'm just saying, could you be prepared to bring information with regard to how much energy they would use? And would that affect our community? And would there be a process possibly in us being changed to another provider for our electric? Because of the amount of energy that
Yeah.
they're using?
Yeah, that,
They could use up,
No.
quite a bit of energy.
yeah. So I know from a previous data center case we had, it's not like they're gonna get the electricity you're using. Okay? You're gonna have your electricity. What they need will be provided to them, but I'm not an expert in that.
For instance, we're in we're in a co-op right now in our neighborhood. Now, if we were to
You have-
switch to Dominion, we'd probably have to spend
But-
a bit more money for our electric.
Yeah, but you're not in Dominion's area. You're in Novak's area.
Exactly.
And,
Is there a possibility that that could affect us in some way?
And I don't think she's asking you to answer that right now.
So ma'am, as the franchise lines
Thank you, Jeff.
and the franchise lines don't change.
They don't.
The franchise line is one, across my street, they get gas from Washington Gas and a gas light company, electricity. I get it from Dominion Gas. Nothing will ever change.
I
And those two firms hate each other, which they can know.
You have that information for sure.
It's, as I, if it goes to franchise lines, won't happen with franchise, okay? And so if you get Novak, you're gonna get Novak. Now, if Novak wants to sell that franchise, that's another question, but it won't happen because of any specific parcel of land being developed. There was one more question here, then I'm gonna move the meeting on to from the points.
I was just gonna circle back on parking reimagine. I think he thought that if you reducing the parking, it's gonna reduce the expense of the developer, therefore it's gonna reduce the pricing of the units, and I think that's far fetched. I think just that land is gonna get developed by the owner, then the landowner wants to sell it for max dollar, developer's gonna want to sell his units, maximize the amount of units he can sell, and develop it for maximum amount of money he can get. So I just wanted to, if that was your point, I just want to make sure you think about that when you're starting to vote discussions on parking.
And so here's another question that has been issued on the chat. I want people to know that the question was asked. Question is, do we know the schedule of testing of the generators at the data centers? We don't know that it's going to be a data center. It might be a warehouse. It might not be any of these. It might be a car park. Therefore, there's no schedule. That's premature. And I'm going to push that question in the future. Remember that when development happens, there are three things. There's the plan amendment, there's the rezoning, and there's the detailed site plan. Each of those has more detail, and the question of how the testing of generators is not a question that's pertinent to either the plan amendment or the rezoning of the property. It might be pertinent to the detailed drawing of the parcel. And each of those is reviewed separately. And so when people ask a question at this level, that's more of the lower point, they're not going to get an answer because we don't know what it's going to be now. The question is that asking permission to do either one of those two things. We don't have that answer. It's for Mr. Eugene, it's premature to ask the question. I hope I'm answering it for Kathy's point, but this is from our perspective of land use for transportation. You have to know the question you can ask at this point, all right? And that is not yet a point. All right, with that in mind.
That regarding the data center.
Okay, go ahead, ma'am.
This is for my husband. More soccer fields for grown-up players, older players who are still active playing soccer.
Grown up play football.
This has been, thank you, Keith, for bringing up baseball.
Okay, one more question for the ether. Working group should also include people who live in the sacrifice zones. Aren't they expertly equipped to talk about the realities of an operation? That's the question that was raised. Okay, so with that in mind, I'm going to go to our agenda. 1 second, please. I'm going to share Foxfire. And, all right, so let me share. All right, so I want to point out on this, and again, it's maybe hard for you to see. You can always get to our agenda. Our agenda shows that we have, well, this is the land use agenda. I want the agenda for the this meeting. So this is here, okay? And so tonight we talked about the membership meeting in the state of Sully. We want to thank Kathy Smith for being here for close to 2 hours and answering our questions. Kathy. Good. Thank you. All right, there I am. Okay, so in any case, as I want to point out in our agenda, you could follow the video in May and June. It's linked here, the agenda today. This items of general interest is portable outdoor fireplace safety information, the shape of future aging plan, and the fact that remember that there are changes to the metro line that will be ongoing until the month of July. If you want to get an Arts Fairfax ticket subsidy grant, there's a link here. And I want to point out what we're planning to do during the summer and next part. The Sully District Council does not usually meet in the summer months of July and August. We can if necessary. It's not planned to. Our next meetings are planned for September, and we're hoping to work with the League of Women Voters Fairfax area to meet with the candidates. As you know, this year, we have a total of 14 candidates that you will have to vote on come November. You will be voting for the Board of Supervisors representing Sully, the at-large chair of the Board of Supervisors. You're going to be voting for 3 at-large planning, Board of planning. School board members, and the Sully school board member. You're going to vote for your local delegate, your local senator, 3 people from the Soil and Water Conservation, a clerk of the court, a sheriff, and a Commonwealth's attorney. I don't know if I got all 14, but I think I got one.
I think you got them all.
Okay, so the most people you could ever vote for at one election will be coming up in November. And we hope in the months of September and October to have a meet your candidates night with the League of Women Voters. The League of Women Voters have a policy, though, that unless they get both candidates to agree to attend the candidates night, they will not have one of those speakers attend. So if you get let's say the Republican sheriff's nominee and not the Democrats, they will not invite the sheriff and have that as support. They want both of them there. They don't want a one second. Now, if the person who's provided this show up after giving a commitment, they'll go ahead with a little dummy say, not here. All right? But we don't have that yet. All right. The next item is our land use committee will meet on the 3rd Monday of July, 17 July. Right now, we're having the public facilities update, the comprehensive plan, and additions to both Brookville Elementary School and Lee's Corner Elementary School, as Supervisor Smith pointed out. We're also going to have a decision vote on the question about that parcel on the west side of the car auto park. Okay. With that, I thank you for coming tonight. Does anybody have anything they want to say before I let them go? I will be adding your names and emails to our Sully District Council distribution list so that you will get all of our mails in the future. Okay? And again, I recommend that you get an ad hoc group of concerned citizens of Pleasant Valley and just say you're a group. Elect your president and things like that. You don't have to have a formal group. You just have to be a group. Just get a group. You got enough people here. Be a group. Do your own thing. You don't need the HOA, the Citizens Association. You can say concerned citizens of Pleasant Valley, and then submit an application and join us and say concerned citizens of Pleasant Valley. And then you're a person, you're a group. And you can get 10 minutes in front of the planning commission and 5 minutes before the board rather than yourself. Again, it's just my thought. Organize. And you're going to sing the Wobbly song. Okay, with that in mind, any other comments? Thank you again for coming. Have a great summer.
Thank you, Jeff.
So that area. You can see it's not developed, it's your priorities. That goes here, and it's right here.
Okay. That's the only. That is lemon balm, right on. No, I don't want to contact. So, my flight is on. That's the base plan.
Been sending an email, Sam. Because I'm sure